Hello and welcome to the Growing Healthy Families podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Haggerty. On this show, I interview the world's top health experts so that you can know with certainty what it takes to give your family a life of epic health and wellness.
As parents, we don't want to see our kids struggle. I knew that he had the potential. I knew that something needed to be done.
I was 18, unplanned pregnancy, didn't know what to do. Do we keep the child? Do we not?
For us, one of our goals always is to try and make sure that, we're here.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that.
Hey moms and dads, it's Dr. Scott. Hey, in this upcoming episode of the Growing Healthy Families podcast, you guys are in for a treat. We have on Dr. Tony Ebel, who is a pediatric and family chiropractor from Crystal Lake, Illinois. Dr. Tony is first and foremost an epic husband, father, and family man. With his first daughter being born 2 weeks before graduating from chiropractic school, a family-first focus is all that he has ever known. He applies exactly that to his practice every day. Having had a massive pediatric and family focus to his practice from day one, that has become the work he is best known for, making massive impact in the pediatric chiropractic profession and helping lead it and grow it for more influence and impact in the world. He runs a 5-doctor, 65% pediatric, 100% cash, and 100% crazy fun family wellness practice in Crystal Lake, Illinois as his main job. And then he also spent the last 7 years teaching and training other doctors, pediatric and family chiropractors, through his work with a company called Epic Pediatrics and Epic Practice, and specifically the world's largest online pediatric training program, which is how he and I began working together. His wife, Christina, helps run the practice, as well as obviously helping to keep his life in order. They have 4 beautiful little ones, Addison, Oliver, Elena, and Amelia. Oliver is their Chiro Miracle Man, who was born early and with a traumatic birth that, according to the medical team who first saved his life, meant he was guaranteed to live a life full of seizures, autism, cerebral palsy challenges if he made it at all. And moms and dads, in this upcoming episode, he is guaranteed to share this story with you because it is what drives him every day. Thanks to pediatric chiropractic, Oliver is now a thriving, smiling, crazy, healthy 9-year-old beautiful little boy. So while he was already on track with his pediatric obsession and focus from the day Oliver was born to his last, the only thing Doctor focuses on is making a massive shift in society where pediatric chiropractic will be the first choice for healthcare in families everywhere, not the last. Moms and dads, I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. I look forward to seeing you guys on the inside. Hello, moms and dads. This is Dr. Scott Haggerty back with the next episode of the Growing Healthy Families podcast. Moms and dads, I am beyond excited for this episode because the guy who you see in that camera there, Dr. Tony Ebel, he is the man who is the reason that I am a pediatric and family chiropractor today. Dr. Ebel, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, buddy, man. Thank you so much for being with us in this thing we do, serving kids and serving families. I can't wait to connect to your tribe and talk it down all the way through.
Sounds excellent. So let's start with something I like to do here to kind of begin the interview. So what is one thing that most people don't know about you?
All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to tap back to your, before pediatrics, your athletic background, Dr. Scott. So one thing most people don't know about me is that I have an insanely high vertical jump. Not what it used to be here, okay, a decade or so ago, but short, stubby farmer guys from Iowa, a few of us can jump high. So there, I'll throw that one at you. How's that sound?
It's probably from all those days you had to learn how to go and throw hay bales, strong hips, right?
Exactly. Actually, that was my very first business. That's exactly what it is, for sure.
Yeah. Before there were kettlebell swings, there were hay bales, right?
100%. Before there was machines, there was called farmers' children. That's what it was.
Amen. They don't call them slave labor, but they do call them kids.
Yes, big time.
Oh my goodness. So Dr. Ebel, you are known the world over for the work that you have done teaching people about the perfect storm. Could you share with everyone how the perfect storm first came on your radar?
Yeah, totally. What I'll try and do is tell the brief version of it, because there's, like all of us have in our life, there's a lot of stars that end up aligning that you don't even know were, right, as it comes to be. But the short of it is that I shifted from planning to be I'm going to call it a regular chiropractor when I got out of school, right after, right in the midst, honestly, of graduating and opening up, our oldest daughter, Addison, was born just 2 weeks before all of that. So right away, this prenatal, pediatric, family care perspective just, awesomely smacked me right in the face and mattered more to me than anything else. So I started taking my pediatric training and certification course in chiropractic. And it'll sound nuts as we have this conversation today, but 12, 13 years ago, autism was barely on anybody's radar. Sensory processing disorder was not a set of words anyone would have recognized or understood. But we did as we got under the hood and as I went through this training. So it first came onto my radar in the class that I was taking to learn how to take care of these kids. I went, oh, yeah, that was me. Totally, ADHD, sensory, kid who could never sleep. Like, I don't remember falling asleep. I couldn't, right? When I was on the bus and the bus got loud with all the noise, I bit my backpack or I bit the seat, so I was a sensory kid all the way through. And then it literally 7 years later worked backwards. And I went, whoa, did chiropractic knock all that stuff out for me too, in addition to my shoulder and neck issue, which was my start. And then the real big perfect storm piece came. This is the farmer in me. I just flew headfirst into helping and serving these families. And I served on the board for our early intervention program here in the county of Chicagoland I'm in. I went to mental health board meetings and parent support groups. And at that time, Dr. Scott, it was my first patients in 07 and 08 of the perfect storm were 17, 18, 19-year-old young adults whose parents were running out of hope. How are they ever going to make it on their own? I'm getting older. We've tried every medication under the sun. And I would take these kids' case histories. So here's where parents will really see it, and it's what you're amazing at educating your tribe about. Through the case history that we would take as a doctor of chiropractic, which means we're not doing it just to fill out paperwork. We're doing it to actually find the cause or causes. And I kept hearing, and we're going to talk about that, I'm sure, as we go on, but I kept hearing that same, the pattern is the word that we use in chiropractic, pattern recognition. And I heard, okay, everything I was told is causing all these issues, either genetics from mainstream medicine or toxins from kind of, I'm going to call it mainstream holistic care. They were in there, but not like the real perfect storm things. So 2008, put my first PowerPoint together. It had the worst font and the worst pictures, and I was probably the worst presenter ever in the world. But I did my first ever perfect storm workshop in 2008 for the mental health board in McHenry County, Illinois, right across, this is how God works, right across the street now from where my big new massive clinic is set up shop. That's where the perfect storm was born in 2008.
Wow. How amazing and how ironic.
Yes. It was, that's just a crazy, the day we moved in, we were so busy and consumed by this move. I completely missed it. And it was, plus 11 years. We moved in the day, everything was done. The furniture was set up. We were an hour away from our first patients coming in. And I looked out the street at the windows and I went, whoa, wait a minute. That's the room. I could see window to window, the room where their community room is, where I set up my projector that night and did the first ever talk on the perfect storm. And it's not stopped ever since, because this is what families need to know to get their hope and get the help they need.
Well, something tells me there was some providence involved in you having to stare at the place where it started every day. You know what I mean?
It's wild. I love it. You never know until you get to that point. Then you're like, okay, we got you.
Amen. Well, and you started talking a little bit about the 3 T's, and we talk about this. You train doctors all over about the 3 T's and their effect on pediatric brain development. First, what are the 3 T's and how do they affect our children?
Yeah, it's so cool, because we can go back to 1895, the original chiropractic writings and conversation, putting these 3 T's together. And then you can go to Harvard's pediatric neurodevelopmental world-renowned website right now and really read the same conversation, just with, 2020 language instead of, early 1900s. So the 3 T's are, in chiropractic, we nickname them so they all kind of link together, right? You go to school for a long time, you learn these little colloquial, memorization things. So it's trauma in the physical sense, toxins, so that would be chemical stress, and then thoughts, which in today's world we talk about mental, emotional stress. And the real key for parents to know when it comes to pediatric brain and neurodevelopment is none of them are good. We don't, at any stage in life, want to go through those three if we don't have to. But the real thing that makes the perfect storm in this pediatric conversation so imperative is the more we have, yes, that's a negative connotation, but the earlier that child's brain and nervous system experiences these stressors, the less prepared and developed it is to adapt to and be resilient. So what we found is that kids are exposed to all three categories of these stressors more than ever before, but the real kicker is earlier than ever before.
That's so true. And that's every piece of research right now is going in that exact direction. You're hearing those conversations finally starting to be recognized and research that we share, obviously, when we do our clinical calls. But it's finally starting to get some mainstream attention too, where there's really some pointing towards, oh man, the way that these kids are being brought into the womb and into the world, there's an impact, you know, and oftentimes it goes undetected. And what most, even a lot of the pediatricians that we work with, we're having to open their eyes to go and see there's these effects that oftentimes they weren't even aware of.
Yep. Well, they're just not trained. And again, it's always that thing where, you know, again, the farmer in me, it's you know, if you point the finger at someone else, there's three pointing back at you. You know, I can hear my mom saying that to me for my whole life, right? So we take that approach, right, with our work, with our nonprofit. And what I look at is pediatricians are trained to deal with the here and now and put the fires out so they don't look back. You know, if they do take a case history, it's literally just an office procedure. They're not really looking for clues and really putting that story together as we did with our perfect storm science. So when you don't do that, when you don't have that training and knowledge to do that, you miss what started the storm. And if you miss what started the storm, there's no way you're going to, be able to take care of it. You know, at best, you're going to try and, bandage it up and kind of work around it. But what we're obsessed with is going backwards to get those details. This child went through these things, so we know exactly what to address with the forward plan to change the future story for that child and their quality of life.
So, obviously we know that there's this three-part animal, right? Chemical, physical, and emotional thoughts, traumas, toxins that all kids, all moms and dads are exposed to. In your research and clinical experience, where do you see the majority of the neurodevelopmental struggles really beginning?
Yeah, I think, for most moms I know that are going to be attracted to a message like this from doctors like us and soak this up, this will be, I really feel, the most important part of the conversation for everybody to hear and understand and then take action to, because it's my answer is going to be completely unique from what you think it is. In our category as chiropractors, we're kind of put under this natural holistic health category, and 99% of conversations in today's world, awesomely by the way, under the natural health umbrella, are all about nutrition or toxins, right? And gluten and casein and glyphosate and all this other sort of stuff that is in our environment. And they're all right. Those are big, not good things, for kiddos and for anybody, but they're also not brand new things. Our children, our parents, way before we had all this chronic autoimmune, sensory behavior, emotional challenges, toxins have been around. Lead paint, DDT, and Marlboros and asbestos, right? Again, back to the farmer lineage here, And so the truth of the matter is the two, Dr. Scott and moms and dads, maternal stress. So the emotional stress of pregnancy, women are no longer supported. They're no longer empowered. We could go on and on for an hour about how much that's the opposite of what they get. They're diagnosed as pregnant. They're scared out of their mind by the doctors about it. Oh my goodness, you're 35, the world is ending. Like all this stuff. So maternal stress from mom is tied in. That umbilical cord is the electrical cord, the neurological cord, brain to brain, nervous system to nervous system. And then birth. Now, the real perfect storm, we call it in the live workshop, right? The moonwalking bear, that the metaphor is birth trauma. The way we physically bring children into the world is so much more physically traumatic than it needs to be a lot of times. Now, again, sometimes it totally needs to be. Save mama's life, save the baby's life. Thank God. We will work forever to be there that says, hey, you did it. Now we got to make sure we take care of it as chiropractors. But yeah, maternal stress. That's emotional, mom and baby, and then the physical stress of birth, emergency C-section, vacuum, forceps, dystocia of any sorts, it's breech, it's a real big issue that the rest of the world does not know about yet at all.
I completely concur, because it's the same thing that we see here. I mean, the more significant the birth process was, the more significant the stress that mom was under, the worse we see things escalate down the road when kids are coming in, whether it's, even if they're undiagnosed, it's the things that they see that are evolving are the worst, and the kids that had the worst starts to the way they were brought into the world time after time after time. And the kids and I was actually just having this conversation with our associate doctor earlier. He had a kid who was super high intervention that he was about to go and do a call on, cord wrapped. And I told him, I said, listen, this is going to be some of the most complicated stuff, because this child went through some of the worst things that you can go through right from the very beginning. And the history told the same tale.
I got a bunch of these that I could, but this will really, really draw the picture in completion for you parents. We have tons of families that have come out like this, either with consecutive children or this one. It's actually one of our CAs who's now halfway through chiropractic school, because the miracles he's seen in his children have inspired him to leave his job as a successful banker downtown Chicago and go to chiropractic school. They got 5 kids. I mean, it doesn't make sense to do it unless you've experienced what we're about to say. And I'll tell it brief. Identical twins. So they were pregnant with twin babies. We adjusted the mama all the way through pregnancy, and she got all the way to 38 weeks. Just amazing mom. And the first kiddo, Jordan, comes down, natural birth, no intervention, no epidural, no induction, no challenge, no physical need. I mean, baby comes out and they caught him. And the second that he comes out, Jordan, as I always like to call with their family, the spicy one, the troublemaking one, right? Jordan flips, goes transverse breach, gets stuck, little decel, little trouble, boom, emergency C-section, yank him out by his head and neck. Same genetics. They then were fed the same food, the same lifestyle choices, the same house, the same siblings, right? You literally have everything else the same. Jordan was easy breezy all the way through. Teo started having a bunch of ear infections, having a lot of trouble, having a lot of sleeping difficulties, having a lot of digestive difficulties. And at month 8, after going through some things that they went through, and he was real sick at the time, all of a sudden went into infantile spasms. Now, we had this family in our sights the whole time. We got Teo adjusted. We got him taken care of. We got him out of the spasms. They're 5 years old now. He's absolutely thriving. But I tell that story a lot because that really illuminates birth. That was the difference. There's nothing else different between these two kids. They take the same vitamins every single day. They're identical twins, right? They wear the same clothes. And but the birth, dramatically different. One, no physical trauma. The second, significant physical trauma, and then all the trouble that we got him out of, but he had to go through it first,
Yep. Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And we see the same things all the time. The one thing I think that oftentimes is not necessarily put together by a lot of folks is the way that these early stressors can influence and affect brain development. What are some of the common things that you teach about and that you see when moms and dads have come in and they're telling their story about the evolution?
Totally. So we'll go a little nerdy, but we'll keep it super farmer simple too here, right? I'm especially for you all in Big Ten country, right? I had to, and I live in Big Ten country, but I'm a Big 12 transport. So I'm feisty here. Okay, I'm not happy about this, right? I'm just on the wrong side of the river by a little bit, But the truth of the matter is, it's this. Motor development is everything, right? You go to a pediatrician, they know that. You go to a pediatric PT, OT, speech therapist, they know that. You go to Harvard's website about the developing brain and minds, they know that. Motor movement development done on track and smooth and well equals brain development. Brain development on point equals everything on point. Respiratory, immune, gut, social, emotional, speech, everything, right? So what we're getting at here, parents, is that when you alter motor development, physical trauma, or any sort of trauma that gets the nervous system to go in its neuromuscular protective state, fight or flight is this. It doesn't move as well. It doesn't go through its normal motor movement milestones. And it can be either too fast or it can go the other direction. We usually call them delays, but too fast isn't good either. Mm-hmm. And you alter that motor development. And the spine, and I'm probably jumping ahead here a bit, but the spine, specifically the upper neck around the cerebellum and the brainstem, that is the most important motor development conduit and communication pathway. Again, being in Chicago, all of our interstates and O'Hare, we always use the analogy of that upper cervical spine, especially, is air traffic control from all neurological signals, but especially movement and motor development. So when you alter that physically, emotionally, chemically, because if you don't think emotional stress and fear and anxiety stresses out the neck, well, try being a stressed mom and dad. Where do you feel it? And if you don't think that toxic stress stresses out the neck and the head, go have too many margaritas tonight and see how your neck and head feel, right? They all set up shop right there, and they do for our kids too, so it's motor, which is the spine is the most important part of that. That's where chiropractic enters this conversation, and most people are surprised by that, but that's the hub. And that's what's altered first, and early head control, all of it. And then until that's fixed later on, that child's brain development is altered for life.
Yep. It's funny, in our Perfect Storm workshop, one of the things I oftentimes will go through, and I'll say, I'll set moms and dads in that same state so they get it, right? So I always say, so I want you to think back to the last time you had a really bad headache.
Yep.
Right? And when you have that headache, what's your emotional state like?
Yeah.
Right? So what is your ability to focus and concentrate? Probably not so awesome, right? What about your ability to process things you're hearing, seeing, remembering, all that stuff? Not so good, right? How many times when you've had a headache, have you ever had one so bad that it made you feel nauseous? So is that an input problem or an output problem? Well, obviously, it's not going to be the stomach that's the problem. It's the input to the nerves, and the output is going to be affected. And I find that when that piece starts to connect, all of a sudden you start putting this whole thing into context, right? Because I think what you've done, like right there, it's all about context when you start thinking about how these processes start. But what's really important about this is that if you have a child that's got, let's just take the pain out of the equation. If you've got all of those other things there in the background from birth, what's going to be like when they're in preschool, elementary school, 3rd grade, 5th grade, 10th grade, and all that stuff is done as evolve.
Yeah.
It's
massive. I mean, it's wild to think of, but it's exactly what's going on. Thankfully, these children don't have the exact pain fiber development that we do into our neuromuscular system, but that's what a colicky baby is. It's a baby with a headache. It's really, really wound up. And that colicky baby, this is what the Perfect Storm really put together. That colicky baby doesn't grow out of it as the pediatrician tells you they're gonna. They don't grow out of their ear infections. The colicky baby grows into the sensory, emotional, challenged toddler, and to the ADHD and sensory and spectrum grade schooler. And the chronic ear infection baby and little one grows into the chronic strep, sinus, respiratory, asthma, allergies, older one. There's no growing out of this stuff. There's growing into newly diagnosed stuff. We just call it something different as the chronological train goes on and the age changes, but it's the same cause.
Yep, so true. Well, and what you did there is you really illuminated a great point, right? Nerves that wire together, fire together, right? And Dr. Tony, a lot of people have never heard that term before. What does that term really mean?
So it's good, on the front end, so every time, right? This too big time. When we have these Perfect Storm conversations, sometimes we feel like I was joking, I'm like part Grim Reaper, but I promise you I'm more of a hope dealer than I am, the Grim Reaper. We just got to get you the answers backwards so you can improve things forwards. So nerves that fire together is a really good thing. It's how we learn everything. That's why humans are so adapted and evolved compared to others, because we were given this supercomputer of a brain, right? And a nervous system that can perceive the environment at all times, perceive our development, and then coordinate the behavior. So it's perception and it's coordination and it's behavior. So whatever that nervous system keeps perceiving, keeps reading, seeing, hearing, experiencing, that's going to become hardwired in. So if it's good, if it's a lot of love and it's a lot of support and it's a lot of good stuff, well, there's a lot of good stuff that comes from that. Good begets good. Well, bad begets bad. The more times you experience stress, the more you go through it. We know that early in life, later in life, the more you get stuck in a cycle of stress, nerves that fire together, wire together, and now all of a sudden our fight or flight, impulsive, hyperactive, anxiety-riddled side of the nervous system gets stuck on, because nerves that fire together, wire together. So it's stuck on at all times, and it's really easily triggered. That's your child who you're like, goodness, nothing changed today. I can't even put my finger on a pulse and say, this is why the meltdown was there, and this is why that, or little normal things, haircuts and teeth brushing and, hey, get in your car seat or hey, fall asleep, just massive meltdowns. It's because their RPMs to their sympathetics have been so wired to trigger in a heartbeat. And on the flip side, the good side, the brake pedal, the parasympathetics, that side is shut down and it's not activating when it needs to be called upon to do so.
So incredibly true. And thanks for going into the detail on that, Dr. Tony, because I think a lot of folks, if you don't have a context for what that's really like and what's happening, how these things evolve in a child's brain, it's hard to understand how you go from A to then a diagnosis and the struggles and what happens in between. And it's just efficiency, right? Yeah. And you can be efficient at learning how to ride a bike, right? Get on the bike the first time, fall down. By the time you're on a time 100, you've gotten pretty good because the brain learned how to do it. It wrote a new pattern, kind of like when you go to bed at night and you update your computer, right? Except for with Microsoft, it takes 4 hours. But when you wake up the next day, you've got a little bit more efficient program than you did the day before because the brain's all about efficiency. Big time. And it refires and it rewires every day and every night, and those sort of nerves wire together and fire together again, which is awesome for learning and it's awesome for sports and skills, but it's really bad when the nervous system's getting way more efficient at being able to fire off a stress response. So, kind of like a teapot, right? You turn up the heat progressively, eventually the water's going to boil. That's where a lot of these kids get to, isn't it?
Yeah, they're right on the edge of it all the time, so it doesn't take much to trigger it. And some kids it's emotions, and some kids it's impulsivity, and some kids it's focus and concentration issues, and some kids it's an immune eruption. Mm-hmm. So because the nervous system controls everything, each child is going to have a slightly different expression of that, which is also why we can't cookie cutter our approach that says, oh, they went through this, have that, so you get this, which is why so many parents get frustrated because it's like, well, that family said their child had this same thing, and there's a difference between same and similar. There's a difference between common and normal, right? Yep. So it's totally common that kids go through this perfect storm nowadays, but it's not normal that they're so sick and stressed all the time. It's really common that another family will have a similar struggle, try this and it helps, and it doesn't help your kiddo because of the intricacy of the nervous system. And that's where, again, docs like us, we know the big picture, we know the groups, we know the patterns of how kids get stuck in this. We're having that conversation today. But when we really dig in and get an opportunity to help a child, it's laser beam focused on what that child went through, what's going on with their nervous system, digging into their case history, running our scans and our evaluations on them specifically. And that's really what separates us. Not only the understanding and the scientific approach, but just the detailed. I could probably jump ship there. Sorry, Dr. Scott. But
no, you're good. Loving it.
That personalized approach. Oh, I'm a parent. I got my 4 beautiful kiddos. Like, we don't want cookie cutter, general, vanilla answers, explanations, and certainly action steps, right? To help our kiddo. We want somebody to just really dig in. Tell me everything about my kid you can find out. That's what we do,
Amen. Well, you brought up something I think that's important. You talked about the nervous system and the way that it's supposed to work, but a lot of moms and dads, they don't know how this all is supposed to work. So could you take a minute and just kind of lay it out, right? Like how should things work in an ideal world? What controls things? How does the body work? How's it supposed to talk?
Yeah, so there's a central hub, right? There's the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the nervous system, whatever we use in that interchange, it all means the same thing. But 99.99% of it is supposed to run on autopilot, right? It's really a sensory read, react, respond system, right? I mean, the brain is a gigantic sensory supercomputer that we consciously control very little of. And if we really, like we're talking about today, put that to our kids, even less for them, right? Because they're still developing that. So optimum development, again, it follows the motor pathway first, and then the other subsystems and main systems come online after that. So as the motor system goes, then you start to develop the social system, right? The baby that'll make some eye contact, will smile, will coo, will laugh, will do these things. Then from that, as the motor system goes and the social system goes, obviously the feeding, the digestive system is supposed to be turned on. That is completely run on autopilot, after swallowing happens. This is why so many babies are refluxy and colicky and constipated, because the central nervous system controls gut motility and movement. So the gut is immature at first. but then it develops, right? With reps and time, nerves that fire together, wire together. The immune system really kind of follows right, lock in step with the gut. So if one is altered, so is the other. And then later on, as the social, kind of the basic constructs of social development happen, then speech and communication comes online, right? Now we're starting to bring that higher level communication. So if we sum it all up, and you can put it in all the different systems, you really have gross development, so gross motor, gross function development, big stuff. And then at kind of age, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pieces and parts of the fine motor development starts. So what we see with a lot of kiddos in the perfect storm in the neurosensory world is that even if some of the gross motor stuff is there, some of the fine motor, the social interactions, the speech communications, the digestive, elements start to get stunted and stuck, and they don't go through the developmental pathway. And that stuckness we call subluxation. That stuckness is the sympathetic nervous system stuck on, and that child ends up with challenges from that, sensory emotional ones, social ones, behavior ones, digestive and immune ones. It really, most kids that we see, there's not one challenge, it's everything tied together.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing that we see here all the time. Dr. Ebel, you talked about the fact that obviously there's these traumas and there's these things that kids go through early. So for a mom and dad who's listening, who's thinking, okay, so wait, you guys are pediatric chiropractors. So what does a chiropractor have to do with helping my child to be able to have a better quality of life if they're struggling with ADHD or sensory or whatever the symptom set might be? How does that work?
Okay, well, first off, before we even talk about the clinical approach and like what actually happens to instill change in the nervous system, the thing you're going to get with a pediatric trained chiropractor, especially from our camp, is you're going to get the understanding that they're looking in the right places, right? That they know what to look for, that they have the understanding that their scientific understanding of what's causing these challenges is not incomplete. Because if it's incomplete, so will be the plan, right? So the first thing you're going to get, which is so valuable to families, is a really solid understanding. Things are going to make sense for the first time, and today is probably helping you do a lot of that. Dr. Scott and our Perfect Storm workshops do that for people all the time. That it's a very emotional conversation where you're like, how come nobody told me this before? This makes so much sense. That exactly is my child. You literally just told my child's story that they always knew, but you didn't know, right? Because people hadn't put those puzzle pieces together. So the first thing you're going to get is that. And don't discount that, because as a parent, there's an internal innate mechanism where when our child is struggling, we want to help them, of course, but we know that the order of helping them is get the answers as to why they're struggling first. So you're going to check that box. You're going to get your hope back. You're going to get your answers. You're going to get things that make sense. And I see chiropractors do that far better than anyone else, because that's our obsession. We need to make sense of it first. And we love to explain that to you guys. Maybe a little too much sometimes, right? We're like, you know all about this. And do that. But at Perfect Storm parents, that's what you want. Second, how does a chiropractor help? Well, our adjustments, which are vividly, markedly safe and different for children than they are, adults, NFL football players or back pain manual laborers, right? It's vividly different, but it is a motor influence. It is a stimulus done, again, and there's scans and exams and protocols that we follow to know exactly where and how much and how often to change and improve motor function, because a subluxation is a stuckedness. Subluxation means the movement of the spine, and specifically the entire, therefore the whole motor system, is altered. It gets out of alignment and it gets stuck. And then from there, that's that dyskinesia. From there, it alters all the other stuff we've been talking about. So when you can find those subluxations and you know exactly where to make these light, easy, specific, neurologically programmed adjustments, you improve motor function. You improve input, as Dr. Scott was talking about. And when you improve input and sensory integration function, you improve everything.
That's so crucial to the conversation, because input ultimately dictates output.
Yes.
And, in my practice, oftentimes I'll reference some of the research that's been done by Dr. Heidi Horvich's research group. And, one of the most important things I think that she really was able to flesh out is that the effect of the adjustment is on the prefrontal cortex. And moms and dads, if you're not familiar with the prefrontal cortex, it's what makes us different than an ape or a lower animal.
It's the executive function center. And when we talk about executive function, her research showed that the effect of an adjustment is not on the spine at all. It's on the prefrontal cortex. Yep. It changes instantly the effect of the way the brain integrates. And when I saw that the very first time, I mean, it literally changed the way that I thought about brain development, what we did, but it also answered a lot of questions. Because once you understand that on an EEG, right, this neuroscience group went to the highest level of research, and they found that the effect on the spine was the prefrontal cortex, both sides of the brain, they synced up for a period of time. Yeah. A 20% boost instantly after adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, just one.
Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah,
that's massive.
And that's important, if we have some real deep, analytical, science-loving parents or even other professionals on here, the world of research has, I guess I'm going to use the word to a degree, wasted billions and billions of dollars looking for ADHD, anxiety, and all sorts of other, heck, even depression and other stuff, inside the brain, because it should be a prefrontal cortex problem. It's executive function, it's decision making, it's social, it's cognitive, it's all these things that are all in this area of the brain. And we have all sorts of super, just MRIs and PET scans and CAT scans and everything else. And we've looked for autism, ADHD in the brain and never found it, right? The prefrontal cortex in its structure and in its blood flow and in its function looks exactly the same as others who don't have the disorder, because you can't see on that sort of imaging, not yet anyways, what we're talking about here, in that it's the motor sensory influence from the bottom up, back, forward into that prefrontal cortex. So when we make those adjustments and those movement-based impulses, and especially when we know where to make them and where not to make them, that's the difference between a pediatric chiropractor trained in our methods versus others, is you get to change that prefrontal cortex and all of that executive function, emotion, cognitive, focus, concentration. So that's the deep, deep science of how it works. And it's awesome. I know Dr. Scott and I are voting, we have extra votes for how awesome that is.
Yes.
But man, parents, that's what you're looking for. That's the answers, because the medical doctors aren't going to look there. And even if they did follow their science and looked for it as they have, they're not going to find it, because they think that the nervous system stops at the foramen magnum, and it doesn't. In this essence of pediatric motor development, the brain begins at the brainstem. So
true. When we talk, you oftentimes we'll talk about this 5D algorithm. Yeah. And this is really critical to this conversation right now, because it very much is an algorithm that we watch happen time and time again in a child's or an adult's nervous system, isn't it?
Yeah. And it usually goes in a chronological order. Neurological, this is how things stack up and cause the challenges, the output, the symptoms, but it goes in a chronological order where these things are altered. So the first one we already got into quite a bit with that dyskinesia, the subluxation, the misalignment, the fixation. And again, that's going to come a lot of times. We find that it's very likely in that child's spine in utero yet, because of all the stress and the tension that the mom is going through. That whole system is in protective mode. And then certainly at birth, the upper cervical, like just honestly, if you watch one of our live webinars or workshops where we're going different than this format, we show a video, but you can go on YouTube and you can literally watch a C-section delivery and just see the physicality of what happens to a child's head and neck. And you wouldn't have needed to listen to our whole conversation today to go, ooh, that's not good. And most children are entering the world that way in some form or fashion. So dyskinesia sets up what's called disafferentation. Long word that means altered input. Same thing we've been talking about here this whole time. When you alter sensory integrative input, you alter output. So disafferentation, we can expand next on that proprioceptive part because it's movement. But then you go into dysautonomia, because the brain is getting bombarded all the time from the dyskinesia and the disafferentation with noise, with stress, what's called nociception. That's not good, right? That's that stressful day. That's that noisy business. That's all that sort of stuff. And that noisy brain gets ticked off, wound up, stressed out. So dysautonomia is where it shifts into excessive fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system. Also within dysautonomia, just as bad, probably the worst side of it is lack of relaxing, calming, socializing, integrating side. And the fourth D is dyskinesis. So that abnormal energy output. So now it's turned. So it was input, organization, and output. Dyskinesis is the nerdy neurological word for ADHD, meltdowns and tantrums and anxiety. Okay, it's coming out. Abnormal energy responses. Why did your child just throw a meltdown? Because you asked them to eat broccoli, right? You know, and that, so that's the dyskinetic response. And the fifth D, there's a lot of them that sometimes we use to interchange in this spot, but they just become disconnected. You know, they become disconnected from the appropriate responses, the development, and what we really get to as parents, Dr. Scott, myself, and most of our tribe is they become disconnected from that optimum quality of life and expression pathway that they should get to be on, you know, and they get disconnected. They get so much challenge from that. So what we do is we go backwards through that. We improve the kinetics. So we improve the sensory system. So we improve autonomic prefrontal neurological, you know, function. We improve energy output. We calm it, organize it, regulate it by improving the input. And then you reconnect that child to their best potential and their best pathway. And I'm going back to the same word. It's awesome. You know,
I love it.
It's because you see a child, you meet the child locked into that storm. You're all about the life struggles they're going through. And I don't like that. Scott doesn't like that. We don't like that. But we're motivated for this podcast, this video, this conversation, our workshops, our webinars, our offices. We're motivated to get to the other side of those 5 Ds, to reverse them. Not to reverse. This isn't a treatment. This isn't a cure. It's not even in the stratosphere of that. It's a neurologically centered approach to improve neurological function, input, organization, to improve output. And that child's quality of life dramatically increases. And you get to see that child smile, communicate, show love, show affection, not struggle in school, not struggle, make friends, have sleepovers, have buddies, not be sick all the time. It's that good that comes when you get the bad out of the way that has us talking about it today, and we'll never shut up about it, truth be told.
Amen to that, brother. Okay, so you've been doing this thing for a long time, right? You've been in practice for a long time. You've seen probably more kids than anybody else has with these poor...
Gray hair.
Yeah, I see. You got some gray. I got some coming in too.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
So, but you've probably seen more kids in your practice that come in with perfect storm challenges than anyone else has. In your data banks, right? And you can tell whatever story you want. What is your favorite perfect storm story that you like always think about and are thankful that you went through that experience and saw this child change?
You know, you probably set me up for this one, you punk. It would be my son. Okay, and I'm going to tell this one brief for the sake of honoring everybody's time
and sit and cry.
Right? So yeah, exactly. I have one son, 3 daughters. So I always say scientifically, I haven't found this study yet, but I know it exists. Each daughter you have, you become a bigger pansy. Cry more often, right? So Oliver was really given to us by God in so many ways, to learn so much from him, to be there for him, to get him out of the storm. So the short of his story is born a little bit early, about 5 to 6 weeks early, super traumatic physical birth. Okay. Very fast birth, literally not caught by the medical team, landed on the bed. My wife delivered on all fours, landed on the bed, one push, shot out like a rocket. Wild to say. I know, because you always hear that joke like, did you get dropped on? Oliver did. It's crazy, you know, like he did not get caught at birth. Head and neck flexed, early, cyanotic, severe physical trauma to his neck and to his skull. Everything we've been talking about. It was 2009. So 1 year after I had put this together scientifically and clinically and had the answers as to why kids were getting sick, realizing it wasn't genetics and it wasn't toxins, but it was birth more than anything. And boom, happens to my little dude, Oliver, in front of my very own eyes. So here's the whole story told short. I saw the best of medicine. Oliver got from that hospital to into a helicopter to 1 level 3 NICU, 2 days there. They couldn't do what they needed to do there. Then to Lutheran General in Chicago. Oliver had 3 surgeries, multitude of medications, a multitude of medical doctors, professionals, nurses, the best of medicine. I saw the miraculous intervention of medicine that this world has been given to us, and it's amazing. And they make miracles every single day, but they put fires out. So after they saved Oliver's life, he wasn't facing much of one. His prognosis was as bleak as you can possibly get. He wasn't supposed to live to age 1. His brain damage from his original stuff was just terrible enough. His hypoxic damage, his physical damage, his blood flow damage was bad enough that they said if he lives past 1, guaranteed cerebral palsy, autism, epilepsy, he's going to be on medications his whole life. He's going to struggle his whole life. He's never going to talk. He's never going to walk. He's going to be the perfect storm times a million, right? Oliver left the hospital 6 weeks later with a perfect MRI, a perfect EEG, a perfectly shaped head, no seizures, no medications, never needed a therapy, never had a seizure, never had a delay, never had a challenge. Oliver cheated. He had me for his dad. And so he had adjustments in the NICU. He had adjustments in this style of care from the very beginning. We went to work on improving the motor function, improving the sensory function, improving then the autonomic development and function. And as much as he got completely off track right in the first moments of his life, because we got in there in the very beginning of life, we got him right back on track. And he's crazy day today to do this. They had a water main break at their school. He's home, he's over. I'm in my guest workhouse here, my office. Yeah. He's at home, a caring, loving, beautiful, crazy healthy, basketball playing, Harry Potter book reading every day, 10-year-old, as healthy as a horse can possibly be. So yeah, he's, and again, oh my gosh, there's a bazillion other ones too, but Oliver will always be my anchor point that God gave to us. I always joke, to make light of it. God knew I have a healthy dose of ADHD, even with chiropractors adjusting me. So I think maybe he thought I would go on to something different, the next year, be like, whoa, thyroid, just kidding, and create a new specialty within my clinic. So Oliver is why I get on airplanes and travel the world. Oliver is why we'll take webinars and videos and podcasts like this, and we'll blast them, we'll broadcast them, we'll reach millions of moms, and I'll never get off that mantle because I can walk into his room every night, kiss him goodnight, and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to work my ass off with Dr. Scott, with our tribe, with everybody to find you, mom and dad, to find your Oliver, and I'm going to just put this important last bow on it. It doesn't matter when we find him. We'll work with our research and our tribe to get there earlier for every Oliver under the sun. But found this, whenever you found this, start today, call today. If you're there in Ohio land, you call that practice, you call Elite Family, Dr. Scott, Dr. Lena, the whole team there. Wherever you are, we'll find you one of us to help you. Don't even worry about, hey, I shoulda, coulda, wish I had, start now. You do. So you have that information to get started, to get your child, back to their best.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I totally set you up there because, I hear this story. I'm not even my kid, and I have a hard time holding it back. So thank you for sharing that because, I remember the very first time that we met you, I heard this story. And ironically, several years later when we were going through our struggles with our own daughter, it was what reconnected us to you.
Yes.
What you were doing and your work and your passion and your mission. And by that point in time, when we met, it had expanded outside of you helping in your own clinic. It had expanded in you trying to help doctors like me.
Yep.
And I will tell you, that meant more than I ever can tell you in terms of what it meant for my family and my daughter's quality of life, because of what you taught us, because of how you helped us, now we've been able to help her and thousands of kids in our own practice.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing, my brother was actually driving us to my brother's the non-chiro, loves chiro more than anybody brother, right? You've got all his stuff. And he literally told me that day, it was Oliver's second day of life. And he said, Oliver will be he'll be that little Buddha. He'll be that light that the world will see, and have that. And it is, it's something that we've always been able to, my wife and I, who's my engine behind me, sometimes if I'm a little tired or don't want to get on that next airplane, Oliver and Christina, Christina will look at Oliver and look at me and, give me a swift kick in the ass out the door and say, yeah, you are. You're going to go help Dr. Scott. You're going to go help those other docs and get to it. And I love it. Because the truth of the matter is, it's what every parent, every child deserves, is that full potential to it. And until we get that stress off their nervous system, that potential is not at its fullest. And so we'll keep finding parents with a message and keep finding those kids with our care. And we'll turn the tide on this perfect storm. I'm very confident of that because of doctors like you who pick up the mantle and charge ahead forward.
Well, we're blessed because there's
a lot of doctors like me now. You know, we talk about the mission, and one of the missions that you've created is to try and replicate yourself. And can you expand a little bit about that, just so, you know, because obviously moms and dads who are struggling to try and find help, there's got to be resources.
Yep.
And you can't be everywhere, and I can't be everywhere. So we've got to teach others.
Yep. And it's crucial, you know, the way chiropractic works, there's got to be a frequency and a habituation to it, you know, into it, right? So there's a relationship over many months of that. So it's got to have a local effect, you know. The answers and the examination process are very valuable, but the action taken upon it is everything, right? You know, that serves, that's the purpose of that. And so, yes, we have set out about 7-8 years ago. I got to partner with Dr. David Jackson, who's, you know, my mentor, our mentor, and good friend. And he, again, another thing of God bringing us together, right? And he heard the perfect, he saw about what we did, and he used his resources. We partnered up and said, here's this training program, our Epic Pediatrics training program. And it's complete, and it's a lot. And it's doctors that step up and take it and go through it. And a lot of times, like you guys are the perfect example. It's a dramatic transformation from what every other chiropractor, a lot of times what we're already doing, right? When we start. So it's really turning completely down on that and up on this with the pediatric approach. So we have trained hundreds of chiropractors. It will soon be thousands. And yes, my vision is, you know, we're getting close to 300 and then 500, and soon it'll be 1,000. We won't stop there. But on our directory, right on our resource place where we can put these messages out, reach moms, and then most importantly, get them connected to a doctor who is local to them, who is trained, who can be trusted, who can deliver this conversation, but most importantly, deliver the care that gets these results to these kids. So that's a huge part of, it's why I've brought in the most amazing doc team to my clinic, so I'm in there 3 days a week, still taking care of patients and love it. But then I get to spend the other days and that working on training other chiropractors and getting that out there. So that was the first step, and I'm going to run with it. Second step is research. You know, you, me, the whole crew here in the last year or two, we woke up and realized, we were awake, we were ready to take this action then that says, okay, well, now the world is ready for us. Moms and dads are seeking us out. They're scrolling, they're clicking, they're YouTubing, they're podcasting, they're driving, they're talking to people. They're like, you know that you're not getting answers elsewhere. So I love moms of this world. Moms always have been relentless, and dads have always been relentless. Now they have access to information that they never had before. So now what we're doing with our group is getting together with our nonprofit called the National Family Wellness Alliance, and we're doing tons of education, these podcasts, these webinars, these presentations and workshops. But all of that is designed for, yes, this to reach you first, but then to fuel and fund literal dollars to do research in partnership with Dr. Heidi Harvick and Dr. Kelly Holt and the New Zealand Chiropractic College and all the researchers and PhDs over there. And we have begun. We're in year 1, so we have a long ways to go, but we will get it done. We are going to raise hundreds of thousands, then millions of dollars for research to continue to put together the scientific package that we already know, but just to prove it, so we can take it to not only parents, but to pediatricians and other professionals and those sort of things, and say, this is what children are missing. So the research, the care, it started with care. Right? Actually, I'll finish up with this. It started with listening. Okay. I was trained to listen, to listen to moms. Dr. Cody, my mentor, I think he knew I talked a lot. He goes, just shut up and listen. He said, when a mom sits down with you, she has the answers as to why her child got sick. She doesn't even know them yet. But if you shut up and listen, you'll hear the through line. You'll hear the story. He really was the precipice to kind of nicknaming it the perfect storm. So it was listening. Then it was taking action. Then it was our clinic and applying chiropractic as I was taught it for musculoskeletal issues, and then adapting and working on kids and getting amazing results, testing, learning, adapting, tracking. Scott, we were talking about that before, learning exactly this works. Here's the protocols. Then once we had those proven in our clinic, then we've expanded it to hundreds of other clinics. They've replicated it. Results are there. So now with education of other chiropractors and parents, the final piece of the puzzle is the research, and we'll get that done over the next couple of years, and it'll really change the world to put pediatric chiropractic first for so many families instead of later on down the road, or what keeps us awake at night. Never is not acceptable, and so we'll keep getting that done.
Yep, and it's exciting because scale. This will be
Yeah.
massive in scale. The research they're going to be able to produce and the data they're going to be able to scrape through as this is all compiled, won't it be?
Yep, it's going to be, and it's the coolest part about it. It's going to come from getting kids better. It's what we call for parents. If you love this, it's a practice-based research. So every scan done at their office, every scan done at my office, and all those that are in our network, they're all going into. I always look up when I say this. They're all going to go into the cloud, right? It shows my technological prowess right there. They're going to go into the cloud, and a bunch of people with bigger brains and bigger computers than us are going to compute all that. And we know what they're going to, Scott's been out a long time, I've been out a long time. We know what's going to happen. We just need bigger data. And we're going to see the story. We're going to see the scans. We're going to see the changes. And we're going to see the questionnaires. And we're going to see the outcomes and the quality of life change. And then we're going to take it to the world.
It's really exciting to see what's coming down the pike here for moms and dads in particular, because once that research goes mainstream and they get to see the successes that we see every day in our practice in research paper format on Fox News and NBC and, in all the major media formats, that's when you're going to really, it's going to be amazing to see what happens, the impact, because then they'll be able to go and really know this is the thing that can change everything.
Absolutely. No, I cannot wait. Day by day, podcast by podcast, doctor by doctor, scan by scan of a kid. It's cool to know we're getting that work done, and it will add up and make that impact.
Absolutely. Dr. Ebel, I thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic. I've been excited to do this for a very long time. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing your heart and your passion with our listeners, and keep going. I know you've got a workshop coming up here tonight, and, God bless you. Go out there and many thousands of people and change their lives. And blessings to you for all the hard work that you've been doing for the last many years to try and reach the masses and help these kids and families.
And I want to return that thanks to you, Dr. Scott, to Dr. Lena, to your whole team. I want to return the favor to all the listeners. And I want all the listeners, I'd like to ask one more favor, and as I return the gratitude, thanks, Mom and Dad, for continuing to seek out answers, continuing to not give up on hope and your child. That's really what we have a favorite hashtag that I live by, hashtag every kid counts. That's our rallying cry. It's about the big mission. Yeah, it's about every single individual one. So we'd love for you to share this, post it on your page, click the 3 little buttons, share this podcast with another mom, put it on your mom support page, put it on the PTA page, put it on your MOPS page, put it everywhere, because you never know how much that one share will reach that one family with that one child that we can get unlocked and out of this perfect storm. So I really appreciate your time with us today, listening and going all the way through this. And we'd really appreciate that share. We do. Dr. Scott will share all the webinars I ever do. We do together. We're separate, but we're not. So I'm a part of everything they do. And so share those, bring moms onto those and dads onto those. And just please share this message for us, because it's how we begin helping a child. And it's what we do all day, every day, and are blessed to do it. So thank you, brother, man.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you so much for your time. And moms and dads, Dr. Tony said everything you need to do. Follow the steps, share, subscribe, like, pass it on, spread the word. And just pay it forward, because there's somebody that that needs to hear this message desperately. So, Dr. Tony, thank you so much for being here. Moms and dads, we'll see you on the next episode. God bless you all. Be elite. Thank you for listening to the Growing Healthy Families podcast, the world's #1 source for health education. Make sure to go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a review. Make sure to follow us on social media at the links listed in the show notes, and let us know what area of health you are struggling with, so we can get you and your family on the road to epic health.